020, DMT, Yahe, spirit molecule, businessman's trip. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is nicknamed the spirit molecule by Rick Strassman, author of the book of the same name. Dr. Strassman conducted extensive live experiments by documenting volunteers' experiences with varying dosages. His work is intense and profound, and the book will make most wonder about the possibility of alternate dimensions of existence and reality. His research, the book, and the accompanying documentary should be explored by every psychonaut. Ultimately, my message regarding drugs of this and other psychedelic classes is that human beings can access these highly complex levels of consciousness without them, but the states of consciousness exposed by them are very near to the ones we strive to evolve and become more enlightened. It is hard for the scientific psychological community to ignore the potential of these experiences and medicines. DMT is a psychotropic psychedelic and is classified as an entheogen. It is a psychoactive molecule found in ayahuasca, an indigenous plant in South America. Ayahuasca has been a significant part of tribal shamanistic life in South America tribes for hundreds of years, possibly thousands. Tryptamine is present in every psychedelic drug and is also present in every living mammal's brain tissue. It is a neurotransmitter or modulator. Its presence in mammals is so minuscule it is considered to be trace amounts. Tryptamine's presence is slight, but its role in mind function is pivotal and powerful. It is quite possible that tryptamine is the catalyst of all spiritual consciousness. If tryptamine is dimethylated, it remains the same molecule but has different properties or expressions. I'm no chemist, but the best I can infer about any molecule being dimethylated is that it becomes more powerful in its expression. It's the same molecule, but now it's on roids. It is suspected that extreme states of consciousness, spiritual and mystical, trigger tryptamine manufacture and release within the human brain. As the brain is the apparatus of the mind, tryptamine is the mind's apparatus of the quasi-spiritual mystical experience. Hyper-intense, mystical, profound, quasi-spiritual experience requires tryptamine to facilitate itself. Where a spiritual and mystical state of consciousness is, tryptamine will be found. DMT is tryptamine that has been dimethylated. It is tryptamine supersized. The mechanism of action for DMT is mostly unknown. It seems to interact with serotonin as all psychedelics do. The key to the secret of DMT's mechanism of action seems to be the tryptamine. DMT seems to activate and intensify the release and perception of tryptamine, possibly even restructure it to behave on a more intense octave. DMT may intensify our endogenous tryptamine and also add amounts of exogenous tryptamine, increasing tryptamine altogether. DMT is unlike any other psychotropic drug in its intensity. The reality experience on DMT does not seem partial or hallucinatory. Users do not report having a drug feeling while on it or after. There is no perception of the physical reality their bodies are actually present in during a DMT trip. The subjects feel they have been teleported to another location without their physical bodies. They are witnessing and sometimes even interacting with a different physical location altogether. Some subjects have had their eyes wide open and were touched or spoken to during the DMT peak, and they were entirely oblivious to the reality their physical bodies were in, but entirely aware of the alternate reality they were in consciously. Many subjects reported having a physical presence in the alternate reality location, yet these physical presences were subtle, not dense like physical matter. The majority of DMT users agree that they are transported to other worlds or dimensions. These locations are inhabited with life forms who are often aware of them and interact with them as well. The majority of DMT users report such similar details of the places and creatures they're exposed to that having nearly identical hallucinations is hard to accept as coincidence. The consensus is that DMT activates powerful psychic potentials that can be used to transcend the physical form for travel and interaction, and that these other visited life forms are aware of this too and also use it. The accounts documented by Strassman are rife with very lucid, detailed accounts of interactions with alien beings. Subjects are fully present consciously, but without bodies, making it impossible to interact physically. The aliens seem to be fully aware of the DMT visitors as well, but also cannot interact with them physically. They are each aware of each other's presence and struggle to find a way to communicate through thoughts, words, etc., but no communication is possible. The trip is quite short. An IV dose of DMT is potent and fast acting, but its duration is only 5 to 15 minutes. The subjects are often shocked that their teleportation experiences were less than 15 minutes because they feel like they've been gone for long durations. With all they experienced and the distance they felt they traveled, it is hard for them to accept it all took place so quickly. They report a wormhole type of travel, covering light years of distance in this moment of time. Quantum physics explores the theory of wormholes. Wormholes would be locations where time and space fold in on itself, making distance and time disproportionately small. If we wrote the letter A on the bottom of a sheet of paper and the letter B on the top of the same sheet and drew a line to connect them, the line would travel the entire sheet from A to B. But if we folded the paper in half, the A and B would be adjacent to each other, and the shortest distance to travel between them would be a hole through the paper, one side to the other. This is the theory of wormholes, that one side of the universe could instantly be accessed from the other if space was folded over itself. Is it possible that tryptamine folds space-time in our minds can then travel through a wormhole to another location? The concept of multi-dimensions is gaining momentum. I exist in a physical space and am confined by my physical density. I cannot pass through a wall, which is also dense matter. I am spot existent. Yet there are massive quantities of subatomic particles that are passing through my body constantly. One of my carbon atoms, I am a carbon life form and so are you, is so large to a subatomic particle that it is like the solar system. We can hurtle a huge spacecraft or object into space and travel far without running into anything because the distance between objects is so massive. The space between protons and electrons in my carbon atoms is infinitely tiny, unless you're a subatomic particle. Then the space is huge. It's all relative, as I can traverse my office space in a few steps where an ant would travel for 15 to 20 minutes before going from end to end. The many South American tribes who used DMT also believed it was a teleporter. Transportation is when a physical body traverses over space, but teleportation is the transfer of matter or energy without physically traversing space. Tribal shaman would use ayahuasca to teleport the spirit dimensions to gather information or to consult with these beings of these dimensions to advise them on tribal, spiritual, or practical matters. I am not aware of any Native American, South or North tribes that did not have a shaman who used psychotropics for these purposes. Ayahuasca, peyote, psilocybin mushrooms, and other psychotropics have always been integral to Indian tribal life. Strassman, Shogun, Hoffman, and other people of science who explore and try to fathom the potential of these drugs are modern-day shamans because they recognize the therapeutic potential of psychotropics and psychedelics. Many people without philosophical or spiritual inclinations become deeply contemplative and philosophically and spiritually fascinated and curious once they experience these drugs. Ayahuasca is typically smoked or drunk. The drink is prepared like a tea. The leaves and roots of the plant are boiled and brewed to extract the active properties, DMT, and to distill the toxins out of the potion. The brew is then drunk. Smoking DMT is only done with extracted DMT, not ayahuasca. The effects are quite different because drinking the brew is long-lasting and far less intense. Smoking DMT is powerfully intense but short in duration, and injecting it is massively intense and proportionally short in duration. A sitter is absolutely required for a DMT trip. A secure and safe environment is also needed. If smoking or injecting, the trip will be very short. As previously mentioned, a drug that is inhaled is always a more intense version of the same high of the drug than if it is ingested, and the intensity of the same drug when injected is like an entirely different drug altogether because it is so intense. Strassman's administration of DMT intravenously was so intense he dared not give anyone higher doses than the small range of milligrams he used. He was concerned participants could have an irreversible psychotic break. Since DMT that is ingested or smoked does not reach these levels of potential, it's hard not to be curious as to what might occur if someone were to take a series of DMT injections that prolong the DMT experience for as long as an ingested one. A series of injections creating a constant, full-blown DMT experience for several hours. Would subjects adjust to the alternate reality and truly interact with these alien beings and locations? Would they return to normal consciousness once the drug wore off? Would it wear off? Ever? Would the experience be so intense it would traumatize them and break down the thinking and feeling apparatus beyond repair? Would they lose their minds? Would they go through the wormhole and become a resident of the other side location? If so, anyone from this reality would certainly perceive them as crazy and delusional because their physical bodies would remain intact, but they would no longer be present. Savants are categorized as impaired, but is it possible that they see everyone else as impaired and fully understand why they cannot or do not function normally? Maybe they do not see it as an impairment, but a superior way of thinking and behaving. When I talk to someone who feels cold in the same temperature that I feel is hot, he or she is not crazy. We're experiencing the same reality from a different perspective. In the same way, a dog can hear sounds of high frequencies that humans cannot. The dog isn't crazy. The dog has sensitivities that humans do not. Is it possible that people who appear delusional are experiencing reality on frequencies most of us do not, and that their senses cannot and do not pick up the frequencies we're experiencing? Maybe the hallucinated giant talking bunny they are conversing with is truly real, but existing in another dimension adjacent to ours. The giant bunny cannot see us, and we certainly cannot see it if we're not on drugs, but the trillions of subatomic particles bombarding my body constantly are present and real. Whether I perceive them or not, reality is tricky. The reality the majority of humans experience is called consensus reality because we all concede the factors and features are true and real. But dogs must think we are very stupid or deaf. The shaman, the psychonaut, and the DMT tripper may wonder how we live in such a limited dimension when the evidence of a more comprehensive reality abounds all around us. It seems likely that psychotropic psychedelics have facilitating mechanisms that interact with brain-mind functions, exposing them to other angles, perceptions, or dimensions of reality. Quantum physics is on the threshold of proving that reality is made of 11 or 12 different dimensions, not the 4 we experience, three spatial and 1 time dimension. Is it possible that DMT rearranges brain functions to access these dimensions the way LASIK surgery can enhance vision? The object on the far horizon was always there, but only with LASIK improved vision could some people see it. There are no known addictive properties within DMT. If there is reliance, dependence, or addiction, it is exclusively psychological, and abrupt and total absence is safe and recommended. Detox requires the same process as any unhealthy substance. Absence from the drug, vitamin supplements, hydrating, eating healthily, and resting properly will allow the body to restore itself to a healthy state. If a psychological or emotional dependence is present, it is best to refer to and use the same strategies outlined in the psychedelics and theogens section, as well as the recovery portion of the LSD section. DMT is an intense experience that requires serious preparation. Thoroughly studying it is essential before you even consider using it. The risk here is that if you are curious enough to study it, you're likely to be stimulated by the topic to desire experimenting with it. I am a drug addict and a psychonaut. It is nearly impossible for me to be exposed to such subjects and not become inspired and motivated to explore them for myself, as I am one of those individuals who needs to self-verify nearly everything. That is part of my addictive pathology. While I am genuinely DMT curious from a psychonautical, philosophical, researcher perspective, I have rejected the inclination and desire to try it. I was on track to experience it for the research of this book, but my aforementioned accident had removed all inclinations and attractions to anything that can interfere with my thinking and feeling apparatus. I am curious, but as someone with an APD, a TBI, and a DAI, I do not think it is smart for me to experiment with drugs for any reason. My attraction to a drug's potential and positivity is influenced by my APD, making those attractions not entirely trustworthy. Aside from that, I steadily maintain what I think is a more absolute truth. We are designed with all the needed components of higher consciousness and can attain enlightened states of being only through conscious work, not by shortcuts. Ultimately, I believe that DMT, like LSD and others, can possibly provide a view of these finer realities, but cannot truly be used for conscious enlightenment. I'm either going to get enlightened the real way or not at all. I will settle for nothing less than the actual, undiluted, pure state of enlightenment. After all, if it's anything less, it's not absolute and not enlightenment, so why bother?